Hello, I'm Sharon Albert, Director of the Mission Trails Regional Occupational Program. The program you're about to see is a production of the Mission Trails Digital Media Network. This production features local students engaged in the California State Career Technical Education Pathway, Arts, Media, and Entertainment. A special thanks to the Media Center for Art, Education, and Technology, a department of the Monterey County Office of Education, for making this broadcast possible. Thank you for watching. Now let's enjoy the show.
Howdy Cowboys, my name's Emma Garcia.
And I'm Brianna Eckhouse.
And welcome to our first debut of Cowboy TV.
We've been filming Cowboy TV at Salinas High for about 4 years now, but this year we've had the amazing opportunity to come film at this studio at MCOE. And upon our 5th visit, we've had an exciting interview with the 2 running candidates for Assembly of the 30th District, Miss Ana Caballero and Karina Alejo. Emma, that is so cool. Tell me about your interview with them.
Well, it was phenomenal interviewing the 2 candidates. They answered my questions very thoroughly, and also the problems that I brought up to them, they had some very good proposals on how to solve them. But you guys gotta check it out for yourself. Hey Cowboys, it's me, Emma Garcia, here today with an exclusive interview with Mrs. Ana Caballero, who is running for Assemblymember of the 30th District. It's so nice to have you here today. Cowboy TV is so honored for you to take time out of your busy schedule to be here today.
Thank you very much, Emma. Happy to be here.
Thank you. So starting us off with our first question is, if you're elected, what changes would you make and how will they affect the youth?
Well, you know, I've had an opportunity to talk to a lot of youth during this campaign season, and the really great thing is I think that they have a real definite idea of what they want to see improved in terms of their future. They're concerned about their future, particularly in the area of education. They're very concerned that they be able to either go to college or that they be able to get a job once they graduate. They're very concerned about safety in the community and tolerance. I've had a lot of conversations around accepting people that are different than themselves. And the other thing that we've had a significant conversation about are the opportunities once they leave the community, because many of them want to be able to leave and then come back and find a job and be able to work here. And so the kinds of things that I've been focusing on is we know that a really good strategy for reducing violence is early childhood education. So bringing some resources to the community to be able to start kids off in preschool so that they start kindergarten at grade level. That will make a big difference in the educational attainment of students, because then they'll do better in high school and they'll be able to go to college. And it'll also reduce our youth violence problem. So the kinds of things that I'm working on are the things that are really gonna meet the needs, I think, the concerns that they have. And in addition to that, they're concerned about the environment. Nice. They want to make sure that we leave a world that is healthy and that they can continue to enjoy the outdoors. And so that's a big part of protecting the environment is part of my strategy for making sure that the future is a good future for our students.
Nice. So could you give us some examples of any bills that you would want to bring up on the floor?
Well, the one that I'm working on right now is looking at an opportunity to bring early childhood education. Okay. And doing it in a way that supports the private child care providers, the providers that are doing it in their home, for example, making sure that they're trained so that they can transmit the information that they need for very small children, so that when they hit kindergarten, they're already ready. They're already prepared. They know the basic information that they need so that they can be successful. That's one of the ideas that I'm working on. You know, I have a whole bunch of other ideas, but a lot of them have to do with affordable housing as well. We have a housing crisis in our state, and many of the students are returning home after they've left the community and living with their parents because there are not enough units. And so one of the things I want to do is to create an opportunity for local government to be able to fast track the development of affordable housing so that not only returning students have an opportunity, but our firefighters, our teachers, and our police officers, people that are just starting off, have an opportunity to either rent or to buy. And having those fast tracked are going to be really important.
Well, I didn't know that people were actually really thinking about that. So it's kind of nice to know. So, what makes you qualified for this position compared to Ms. Karina Alejo?
So, you know, I've had a number of experiences that I think give me the background that's really important at this particular point in time. I had a law practice for 25 years here in the city of Salinas, and during that time I served on the city council as a council member and also as mayor. During that time, I also took a leave of absence from my law practice, and I ran a nonprofit called Partners for Peace, which was a violence prevention program. And we did a bunch of things, had a youth leadership program, had a youth employment services program, had a Breaking Barriers youth program, a number of things that gave me experience working with students and with their parents to help strengthen our community, and we had some of the lowest violence rates during that period of time. But the other thing is I served in the Assembly for a number of years, and more recently I had the opportunity of serving on Governor Brown's cabinet as the Secretary of Business, Consumer Services and Housing Agency. And that experience gave me an opportunity to see from the inside how government works, not just as an elected official, but from the inside how government works. And it was a great experience. And I have some ideas from that experience on things I think need changing in order for us to be able to make things run a little bit better. So all of that gives me a unique opportunity to be able to bring resources to this district, to make sure that rural California is at the table, and that when we're working things out with Governor Brown, given that I worked for him for 4.5 years, it's kind of a great opportunity to have someone who knows, has experience and knows how to get things done.
Okay. Could you elaborate? Are some of those programs that you started still going on by any chance?
Yes, actually,
Oh, really?
Partners for Peace continues to exist. The major program that they continue to do, we used to do a lot. We also did a peace summit every year and brought in major authors and people who he had either written a book or had programs that could talk about how do we cultivate peace in our community. But the piece that is probably the most important piece that still exists is a Strengthening Families program. And what it is it's a program to take young students that are not doing very well, that are truant back when we did the program, and to bring their parents in and to have them go through a curriculum so that the parents know how to set limits, how to be loving, because when your kid is acting up, it's pretty hard to show that you're happy with them.
Yeah.
And communication skills, because part of the challenge for kids is that their parents scream and yell at them rather than talk to them. And the problem with parents is that the kids are always in trouble, so that's why they're screaming and yelling. And so it calls a timeout. It's a program to teach them how to talk to each other and for the parents to develop consequences so that the student understands very clearly what's expected of them. And it's a really good program that has had some really good success. The students get a lot out of it, and so do the parents. And in the end, what we see is that those students do better when they start doing better academically, and some of the discipline problems go away because they have a better understanding of what's expected of them, and they're more willing to be compliant because they get rewards rather than punishment. And that's really important. That program is still existing, and it's a great program.
Sounds like a really good program. So why did you want to run for Assembly?
Well, I could do a lot of different things. That's a really good question because I had to answer that before I decided to come back home and quit my job with the governor and come back home and start doing this again. And really the answer is that I love Salinas, and I love the Salinas Valley and the 30th Assembly District. It's where I've decided to spend my life, and I raised my children here. My husband and I have worked here all our lives. And so it's a special place to me. And in working with the governor, I had to live in Sacramento pretty much full time. And I wanted to come home. I wanted to be able to be here. But more importantly, as I looked at California's economic recovery, I realized that rural California is just not benefiting as much as the big cities. So unemployment's down, poverty is going down, more people are working, but we haven't seen that in our community, quite frankly. And so and the budget's been balanced. Governor Brown and his staff, including myself, did a great job in balancing the budget. And so there's an opportunity now for us to focus on getting the resources that we need to solve some of the problems that we have, whether it's affordable housing, transportation, early childhood education, school. All of those things are on the front burner, and I want to be in this position to be able to help our district, to be able to bring resources to our community, and to make sure that the voice of rural California and the voice of the 30th Assembly District is heard.
Okay. So as for the youth that are 18 and those who are not legally able to vote, what political measure will you take to get their voices heard on the floor?
So that's a really good question. I think part of the challenge is having an opportunity to have dialogues with enough people in the district so that people feel like their voice is heard, and so that the elected representative knows what's most important. And the way that I've always done it is there are community groups that are organized, and meeting regularly with those community groups and having conversations about what they're hearing and what their priorities are is really important. And I'm interested in hearing the youth discuss issues as well. The key is finding a mechanism to be able to hear, because people tend to be pretty busy, and the voices tend to reflect this, like a school or an area, right? Yeah. And to be able to bring those voices together and have them speak, because the district is big. Yeah. It goes from King City as the city most south, but it's the San Luis Obispo border all the way up to Morgan Hill. Yeah. And my guess is that the issues that are important to students are different in Morgan Hill than they are in King City or San Ardo or Chular. Yeah. So I'm looking for the opportunity to have those discussions because I think they're important. And I want to inspire students to get involved in politics. I think that's really important, particularly during this election season. There hasn't been a lot of inspiration, and it's an honorable profession. It's really hard work. But if we don't get good people interested in serving, then you end up with people that you don't really care a lot about, and that's discouraging to me. We need to feel good about our elected representatives. Yeah.
So are you going to also continue the Young Assemblymember program?
I'd like to do that. Yes. Yeah? Yes, I think that's a great program.
I've been in that program personally, and it was a phenomenal program. But the only thing I would hope for was probably be more of like a voice, since in that program we learned about how to do, like how everything runs pretty much, like when you're assembly and so forth. So would you make any tweaks to it where you give the youth more input, where like what are some major issues that you're seeing in your city, or what are some major issues you see within pretty much in our district?
I think that's a great idea. I've also participated in a number of youth programs that take youth up to Sacramento and then teach them and train them, and then they participate. But certainly to do it here and then encourage the youth here to participate in those programs as well would be great. So any ideas that you have that would make it better would be terrific. I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's see. So as we all know that Salinas here has a high rate in gang violence. So what are your plans to help fight against gang violence in our district? And what are your plans to keep the youth safe?
It's a really good question. And, all of the studies, I did the youth violence work through Partners for Peace, and all the studies indicate that it's educational focused is how you do prevention. But what people are concerned about is how can I be safe today? Yeah. And that doesn't happen through the education process. That takes years. Yeah. And so the how can I be safe today really gets back to the elected officials working together to bring all the resources possible to the communities and making sure that they're working together. So what I would focus on is bringing the Attorney General, the highway patrol, having them work with the sheriff's department and the police department so that we can calm down some of the worst of the violence that's been going on and seems to be escalating every year, and put people away that are shooting people and that are murdering. That we have to do right away. But the long-term strategy has to be through education, and it is early childhood education. It's literacy. Believe it or not, there's a real correlation between the literacy rate of third graders and future problems with the law. Not that these particular individuals will get in trouble with the law, but there's this correlation such that the state of Mississippi uses the literacy level of third graders to determine what their future prison bed population is going to be. If we know that, then we should do everything possible to make sure that every single third grader reads at grade level. And so we need to focus on that, and we need the resources, which means smaller class sizes. It means resources going to education so that you can have a reading instructor come in and work one-on-one with kids if necessary. So it's the resources to be able to get that done. And then vocational ed programs. Not everybody's going to go to college, but those that want to learn through a hands-on learning experience will be ready for work when they're done with high school. And so to be able to do that at the high school level and at the community college is real important. And there's some really good vocational ed programs at the community college. We need to beef them up at the high school as well.
So for gang violence here, right? We obviously need more police too, though. I mean, not that they're the only answer, but they are kind of a key point. I know that our governor put aside, I think it was about $5 million, right, around there. $5 million for Salinas for their police department.
So my guess is that that is out of the gang. There's a special fund that is for that goes specifically to police departments. That is for gang intervention, and how the city will use that is up to the city. Whether they use it to put more police officers on the street, or whether they use it to for example, have resource officers in the schools, or do different kinds of programs, is up to the city. And I'm not sure what they program that for, but the city has the resources to be able to hire more police officers. The challenge, according to the chief, is that they have as many people leaving as they have hiring. So I think one of the strategies locally has to be to hire more local people, and that means more local youth to be police officers in the community, because then they want to stay. And they have a commitment. They know the city, they know the neighborhoods, and that's really important when you're a police officer, is to have to know people in the community so that you can de-escalate some of the problems that happen when just kind of normally in everyday police interactions.
Makes sense, because I mean, if the youth or anyone in their community are going to see someone and they're a police officer and try and tell them, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, they're going to be like, excuse me, but I don't really know you and I don't really feel comfortable with you, compared to someone like, if they knew me really well at the community, then they're going to be more like, oh, it's Emma, like, it's okay, like, she's not telling us just to be mean, like, she's telling us, like, because she's really concerned about it, or so forth.
Well, and if you see a police officer and you went to high school with them, then you can have a conversation with them that's a little bit different if someone's going, who are you? I don't even know you. So that's really important. And I think that's a commitment to the community, and it's also good for the police department.
Okay. And so my last question for you is, walking to school and to the store, and just simply walking around Old Town Salinas and just other parts of Salinas, we've noticed that there's like a major homeless issue. And so with that, what are some of your plans that you're going to do to help with the homeless issues here in Salinas and within the district?
It's a great idea. So one of the issues I'm working on is looking at our mental health department, mental health resources, because back in the day, we had state mental hospitals, where we detained people that had such a serious mental problem that they weren't safe to themselves or to the community. Those hospitals were closed. And so now all of those people are on the street. And the challenge is that you can't tell who is seriously mentally ill, who has a drug or alcohol addiction, and who's just, who's a returning veteran and who's down on their luck. And so it's scary. It's really, it's dangerous, and it's a public health problem. So part of what we have to look at is how can we bring the mentally ill off the streets. Well, actually what we need to do is bring everybody off the streets, but I see them as different with different service needs. We absolutely need to get veterans off the street. There's no reason a veteran should be homeless, and the state of California has allocated $600 million to do that. And I was part of the team that put together the plan to get them housed first, and then the mental health and the services that they need. That money is rolling out. I want to make sure that rural California can get some of that. But for the mentally ill, we need a triage. We need to be able to figure out who can be on medication and will take it voluntarily and will be safe. And then who are the ones that are not going to do it, and then figure out, right now they're in prison or in jail, which is not safe, or they're on the streets, which is not safe for all of us. And we need to figure out an alternative for that. And I'm talking to the mental health professionals to get a sense for what we should do. But ultimately, the solution to the homeless is housing first. And we need to get them into housing before we then figure out what the problem is that led to the homelessness. And that's going to take changing some land use options, and to allowing local governments to declare, I think, a state of emergency and house them and offer them services in a way that we're doing differently now. And I want to work on that, and I want to come up with a funding source so that it doesn't fall on disproportionately on blue-collar communities, because the richer communities don't have the same problem that the more blue-collar communities do.
So would you be finding out first, like, who's mentally ill and then housing them first? Or?
Well, I that's the big question, is what comes first? I think everybody needs to be housed first, frankly, but we need care providers that are qualified and know how to make the evaluations, and that can come in and offer those kinds of services. And what they then do becomes important. In other words, you can do the evaluation, and then if there's no place for them to go, it's very difficult. But if you've got places for them to go and resources, then it makes the evaluation really worth it. And so I haven't figured it all out yet in terms of where the money comes from and who's going to house them, but it's really clear that we've got to get them off the streets right away.
Okay. And well,
we're spending money anyway. We're spending money just cleaning up. We might as well spend the money on the housing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. It was nice to have you here on Cowboy TV with us.
Thank you.
So
thank you, Emma. Really appreciate the opportunity. It was great.
We're so glad that you were able to take time out of your busy schedule to come. Come here with us. So, and I know everyone at Salinas High really is grateful to have this too. So,
well, invite me back.
For sure. But we'll see you guys next time, Cowboys.
I'm Brianna Eckhouse, and I hope you had a wonderful break. Today we're taking you through a few ROP classes that we offer here at Salinas High. What does ROP stand for, you ask? ROP stands for Regional Occupational Program, some of which include Mill Cabinet, Drafting 1 and 2, which offers 3 CSU or UC credits, Graphic Design, Culinary, Business Tech, Floral Design, and Welding. These classes offer hands-on projects that prepare you for the real world.
All right, good.
That was good.
You want to do one more run just in case?
Oh, hi, future freshman. welcome to graphic design class. Here in graphic design class, we learn very many different skills that will be helpful to your future. We learn to use things that will help you get a job right outside of high school and help you on other presentations such as Photoshop and Illustrator. If you want to take this class, it is a junior and senior class, but you could get hooked up as a sophomore like me.
Hello, future Cowboys. My name is Gabriel Lippo, and here in pre-engineering, we solve any problem known to man with only our minds.
Hey, future Cowboys. This is pre-engineering, one of our elective classes here at Salinas High, and we are here to show you our wind-powered car.
Yeah, now we're about to test it over here with our little wind-powered vehicle thing. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching, Cowboys. If solving problems with your mind is truly your thing, talk to your counselor about signing up for pre-engineering.
You think you know computers? You don't.
It's a foundation class for any classes that you're going to take. You learn MLA format, business formats, letters, emails, how to type. I know that's a big key for anything.
In this class, you learn everything. You learn how to manipulate letters, and I honestly learned a lot in Business Tech 1 and 2.
Hey, Business Tech! Please and legal. I'm incoming freshman.
Welcome to Green Academy Mill Cabinet class,
In this class, you will learn skills and acquire knowledge that will help you succeed in the job.
as well as the ability to use math in a creative new way. My favorite part of this class is the freedom of creativity in the projects that I get to do.
My favorite part of the class is being able to learn how to cut, glue, and measure my own foot, and being able to go on a field trip to a variety of places.
So sign up for Mill Cabinet.
Hi, future Cowboys. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Liz.
And the best part about being in an ag mechanics class is the hands-on experience you get.
And you're also automatically enrolled in FFA, which means you can raise an animal.
Hey future Cowboys, my name's Alex and welcome to Culinary. Here in Culinary, we do a lot of cooking. Here in this class, we learn how to cook. And if you want to learn how to cook, take Culinary 1 through 4. And we learn a lot of different things here. We learn how to bake, we learn how to cook different foods from cuisines to pastries, and it's a really fun experience.
Oh, hi future Cowboys. I'm Chase, senior here at Salinas High. This is my second year of drafting. I'm currently getting 6 college credits. If you are interested in 3D modeling and 3D printing, or would be interested in pursuing that as a career, possibly engineering, I would suggest going to your counselors and asking to take Mr. Nichols' drafting class.
Hey Cowboys, 3D printing is awesome. You should sign up for drafting if you want to learn how to 3D print.
And there you have it, Cowboys. Make sure you talk to your counselor about putting these classes into your 2016-2017 schedule. If you have any questions, go to Mr. Scully in the Career Center. Have a great week, Cowboys.
Good morning, Cowboys.
And we'll just like...
Yes! I can see it. I can see it. No, I'm not. I'm not going to say y'all. No, I promise Amber I won't.
Is that going to be that?
Yeah. No, I
Hey Cowboys, it's me, Emma Garcia, here today doing an exclusive interview with Miss Karina Alejo, who is running for Assemblymember of the 30th District. Hi, how's it going, Miss Karina Alejo?
It's going wonderful. Thank you so much for having me here.
No, thank you. It's an honor to have you here. So, to start off with our questions, my first question is, if you're elected, what changes would you make and how will they affect the youth?
No, definitely. It's a great question. It's important for every candidate to be able to have the opportunity to express what their priorities are. For myself, I currently teach at Cal State Monterey Bay, and understanding what my students have experienced, what I observe them going through every day in the classroom around issues around accessing higher education, that's an area of priority and focus for me and my campaign. So I definitely want to work towards maintaining accessibility. A key part of that is making sure that our colleges and universities remain affordable for students. So one of the areas that I intend to focus on is making sure that any increases to tuition are carefully examined to make sure that, again, college university stays accessible and affordable. And along those same lines is making sure that our financial aid that we make available to students also increases to be sure to offset any potential tuition hikes that we might be seeing and experiencing. And this is important because too many students are graduating with large amounts of debt. And so for us in the state legislature, it becomes critically important that we secure our students' futures by ensuring that they're not graduating with large amounts of debt. That's one. The other key part of my campaign and my platform is ensuring economic vitality in our region. So we want to be sure, again, that our students graduating from local colleges and universities, whether that's Hartnell, Gavilan in Santa Clara County, whether it's CSUMB, Cal State Monterey Bay, or whether it's UC Santa Cruz, that our students have the opportunities to be able to work in the very communities that raise them. And the last of my priorities and the focus is also ensuring that all of our communities have access to clean drinking water. It's a human right, but also a long-term sustainability plan for our water also ensures that our rich agriculture economy can continue to thrive, as well as supporting tourism, but as well having a long-term source of water also ensures that we're able to grow as a community and attract new jobs to our area.
Can you give us an example of a couple of bills that you want to might throw out onto the floor?
So a couple of bill ideas, of course, it's going to be looking for ways that we can draw and increase more financial aid to our students. So one of the first bill ideas is going to be to make sure that our Cal grants that we make available to students, that we're making sure that that's adequately increasing every year, whether we attach to it a CPI, which is a cost of living adjustment, to correspond with the increasing costs that we see in rent, in food, just the cost of living, to make sure that our financial aid is also on the rise so that students continue to afford to go to school and don't have to spend more time working than they do studying to ensure their success at graduation and for graduation. Another bill idea that I do have is also around jobs and economic vitality. We did have an important bill that was passed 2 years ago that would help us develop what we call tax increment financing, which would help to support some infrastructure improvements. So a lot of places in Salinas, a lot of places in Watsonville, a lot of communities throughout the 30th Assembly District have old and aging infrastructure. So we want to be sure that there's a local source matched with the state dollars to make sure that we can make the proper investments so that more businesses want to come to this area because it's not so costly to do the cleanup or the renovation or reinvestment in old buildings. So that's also another bill idea that we can move forward.
Okay, so what makes you more qualified for this position compared to your opponent?
So I think that in this race you have two highly qualified candidates, but it really what is dependent here is who's going to be able to serve our community in the long term. I myself have the opportunity to serve up to 12 years in this position. My opponent is limited from having served before to only come in and be able to just do 2 years. And there's a lot that needs to get done in our region, so it's really going to be about the state legislator that's able to serve in the long term, that's able to cultivate the relationships up in Sacramento and also at the local level, that's able to draw down resources from Sacramento so we can do what needs to get done here locally in the 30th Assembly District. Issues like affordable housing, issues like gang violence, issues like investment in our water infrastructure, all of that requires a long time, a lot of effort, a lot of fight to be sure that we're bringing down the resources here in our area. And that's only going to be done by a legislator that's able to serve this area, again, as I said, in the long term. So there is a clear distinction between myself and my opponent in that circumstance. And so I do think that the voters need to recognize what it takes. And what it takes is a lot of effort, a lot of work, and it's going to be someone that's able to show up and also follow through on many of these issues.
And so another question is, why did you want to run for Assembly member?
Absolutely. So I'm currently a sitting member of my local city council and have also served as past mayor. Prior to that, I was a planning commissioner, and even before that, a parks and recreation commissioner. So it's been a long career in public service, and it's been incredibly rewarding to be able to work on the challenges that we as a city have faced and confronted. My city is a city of 55,000, so it's a neighboring city of Watsonville, where I currently serve as vice mayor. But now, being able to move up into the state legislature, the state assembly, you have the capacity to impact all of the residents that live throughout the 30th Assembly District, that being 500,000. But also, you make policy that impacts millions of families throughout the entire state of California. So for me, it's really about seizing an opportunity to continue serving. It's about seizing the opportunity to make large impact and big impact change for the residents of Salinas, but also for everyone else throughout the 30th Assembly District.
Okay. And then and as for the youth who are not 18 and those who are not legally able to vote, what political measures will you take to get their voices heard on the floor?
So as I mentioned, I did talk a lot about, a priority area of mine being access to higher education. And I do think that that's a policy arena that impacts residents of all ages. We have our local control funding formula, which is now intended to serve our most vulnerable students in our public schools. And so part of that work that many of the teachers, many of the school districts have taken upon themselves is also to make sure that they're preparing more students to enter and succeed in colleges and universities. And so I feel that as a state legislator, someone that understands what students are going through as they try to navigate higher education, that's also an area and an arena that impacts, like I said, residents of all ages. We want to build the strongest possible schools that are adequately funded, that are in fact dedicating their resources to make sure students are graduating college ready and college eligible. So that's going to be an area of focus that impacts 18 and under. And then what I like to say is for also those residents in our community that are older than 18 or older than college age, it just becomes critically important that we're investing in educational opportunities so that we have a highly educated workforce living in our community that's buying homes, that's investing back in the community, and that become the future thought leaders that are creating and innovating to move our 30th Assembly District forward.
And then, as we all know, Salinas here has a high rate of gang violence here. So what are your plans to help fight against gang violence in your district, and also what are your plans to keep the youth safe?
So as I mentioned, investments in higher education, I'll keep saying that over and over just because it crisscrosses in so many other facets and areas of our lives. And this is critically important when you consider, who is actually filling our jails and our prisons. And many of those individuals that are living or who are incarcerated in our jails and prisons, many of them have demonstrated that they had challenges in schools. Many of them are showing that they themselves were high school dropouts. So for me, it's always about how can we keep students engaged in our local schools, and how can we make the proper investments. If a student does take a temporary leave, what can we do to draw them back in to schools to make sure that, again, they're not out of school with idle time or wasting time or getting into a whole bunch of other issues, including gang involvement and gang affiliation. So that's one aspect. But what do we do with youth that are currently gang involved and gang affiliated? So prevention is one piece of it, education is one piece of it, but then also intervention and early intervention. So upon graduating from UC Santa Cruz myself, I did work for an organization that was dedicated to the principles of restorative justice. And so restorative justice is a philosophy and ideology that guides some of our work in community-based organizations. And it's founded on the principle that even though someone might engage in an offense in the community, they also have the opportunity to pay back their debt to society. And they pay back that debt through society by apologizing to whoever they might have victimized or engaging in community service. And so this is, again, for early offenders, first-time offenders. They have the opportunity, rather than be incarcerated, they're redirected towards a community service project. And as part of this work, you're also having a support system in place. So whether it's a probation officer, whether it's a social worker, whether it's myself as someone who worked as a mentor to many of these students, you have a support system in place while they're doing their community service, while they're trying to get back into school, while they're trying to meet the terms of their probation. So you have what we call wraparound services with the student who just got in trouble a month or two before. And this is a way, again, to intervene early so that they don't go further down that road of gang involvement. So that's another way that you want to sort of make sure you're properly funding community-based organizations, schools, mentors, social workers that are working with these students, just to ensure that, again, they remain on a positive path rather than, going down a negative one where it hurts them but also hurts the community. Other initiatives that I've seen that have been very successful, again, economic opportunity both for the family but also for the student. What we've seen at the federal level is a decline in job development programs for young people. And so that was also something that I was able to work on as a council member in the city of Watsonville, was bring in a summer jobs program. And that's critically important because, again, in communities, we start to see an increase and a spike in crime during the summer months because more students are out of school. And so this is a way, again, where you're keeping students positively engaged and also allowing them to make a living and also allowing them to be able to help out their families a little bit more. And so I think that all those kinds of efforts together, you'll see a decline in some of the gang involvement and the gang tragedies that we've seen in our communities.
So with this, do you want to create more similar programs like Rancho Cielo, or is that kind of what your goal is?
So Rancho Cielo is like one type of program, right, which focuses on the construction and the building trades and being able to engage and provide that kind of job development for young people. Yes, absolutely, those kinds of programs. But there's also a program that's coming into Salinas that's Digital Nest, so it's focused on job training and development around technology. And so giving students sort of the tools and the support to be able to develop schools in technology and utilize those to compete for jobs up in Silicon Valley that pay really well and extremely well and are the future for this region in terms of us being able to proceed and go down that route. But yes, those kinds of job development and job and economic opportunities are important. Yeah.
And so, as you know, walking to school or going to the store, or just simply walking around Old Town or just here in Salinas and other parts of the 30th district, there is a homeless problem. So what are your plans to help with this, not just Salinas, but the entire 30th district?
And I always say this because this is an issue that is of concern to all parts of the 30th Assembly District. So we're talking from Gilroy, Morgan Hill, all the way down to the San Luis Obispo County line and Watsonville and Hollister, San Benito County. You're hearing about concerns over homelessness. And my job as a state legislator is going to be to provide a source of revenue so that local communities can address their unique challenges when it comes to homelessness. because homelessness looks different in every community. Yeah. And we have to be able to provide the necessary sources, the necessary sources of revenue so that each community can address their homelessness population. For example, in the city of Watsonville, we have many families, many men, women too, some children living along our riverbeds. And the homelessness situation and the reason why they're homeless in this situation, it has to do with accessing adequate resources. And part of that barrier is language. So they either speak an indigenous language or speak only Spanish. And then another piece of it too is that they are undocumented. So again, and they're working. They are in fact working. It's just accessing housing is challenging in that circumstance and that unique situation. The city of Salinas, you find it's a much larger homeless population, so you find a full range of reasons why individuals or families might have experienced homelessness. For some, it's that the recession hit them hard, they lost their homes, and they couldn't find a temporary or a more permanent living situation soon enough, and so they're experiencing homelessness. For others, it's issues around substance abuse. For others, it's issues around accessing adequate mental health services. And so currently in the state legislature, this past session, there was one highlight and hope for funding for the chronically homeless and families experiencing homelessness. So the state Senate put together a package. They're offering $2 billion in bonds for communities throughout the state that they can access for populations that are also experiencing mental health issues or have some kind of physical disability. And so this is a good step, but it's not going to address all of our challenges when it comes to homelessness. And so part of this effort that the state moved forward with was to provide a little bit about what I mentioned with the young people, but they're doing this with folks that are also experiencing mental health or substance abuse issues, is that they're housing those in the community that are experiencing chronic homelessness. So that means that they've been homeless for a long time. Mm-hmm. So they're providing housing, but along with the housing, they're also providing the necessary resources to help them get healthy, stay healthy, and ultimately transition into work and some kind of employment. There's also dollars in there that's dedicated towards rapid rehousing. And so what that means is that families that might be struggling because they've lost a job or they've just had some kind of economic hardship that impacts their ability to be able to pay rent, and they might be in danger of losing their home. This rapid rehousing is intended to help those families either pay so that they don't lose their homes, or if they've lost their homes, to help them as soon as possible into transitional housing. So all of these efforts are, as you can see, trying to address the complexity of all the different reasons and factors why individuals or families might end up homeless. And in this particular example, it's trying to address the necessary support for those that have mental health or substance abuse issues, or families that are working their hardest but struggling to make ends meet. So this package includes support for that.
Mm-hmm. And so another question is, police brutality has been a big issue, not just in California, but in the nation. So what are your thoughts on police brutality? Should there be more restrictions, or should there be more tests and when it comes to becoming a police officer? Or like what kind of bills are you thinking of, or possibly would you put on the floor about police brutality?
No, absolutely. That's a big concern in many communities as well, and definitely communities like Salinas and others throughout the 30th Assembly District are concerned that there is excessive use of force coming from police departments, where we've seen community members that are unarmed be hurt, and in some cases die at the hands of police officers. So this is also a very complicated conversation to have up in the state legislature. It's also complicated further by, again, if you're really interested in solutions, there's a big web that you sort of have to navigate when it comes time to where do you tackle it first, where do you invest first. So some of the ideas that I've heard and that have had support from communities, but also from law enforcement, right? Because this is really about moving forward towards solutions in collaboration, in partnership with folks in the community, but also with our law enforcement officers who have to be willing to also make some changes. And so some of these solutions have been focused around providing money and dollars to local law enforcement agencies so they can purchase body-worn cameras. So that is critically important so that in those instances where someone is shot at the hands of an officer, sometimes it happens so fast, you can't always get an objective perspective as to what happened, what are the seconds, what happened in that particular moment that led to them being shot. And so a camera provides that objectivity. It gives you perception that is hopefully unbiased so that you're able to sort of see what were the series of events that led to that incident happen. And ultimately, it's about accountability. Can we hold somebody accountable for what happened? Was it something? It's also educational because we can watch it and see, is there something else that should have been done to avoid that excessive use of force to happen? So that's one. I would say that also in local government, what I've seen work is that we also need to diversify our police force. And so one of the things that we've been able to do is develop a cadet program. So this cadet program starts very early. It starts in the community. It works with young people that are from Watsonville, works with young people that would be from Salinas if they were to develop something similar. It teaches them about the law enforcement profession. It shows them that this is, of course, a career they can make a great living, and also pairs them up with current police officers so that they can learn firsthand what it takes to be a quality officer in this role and profession. So that's one way that you begin to sort of build the pipeline of future police officers and future law enforcement officers that know the community. Because there's also concerns that if you're just hiring police officers that aren't reflective of the community, if you're just hiring police officers that might not speak the same language or don't know the neighborhoods, don't know the community, then you're more likely to see misunderstandings that could ultimately erupt in these kinds of violent tensions that we want to do all we can to avoid. So that cadet program is, again, one way in which we can diversify the profession of law enforcement. Other things, of course, that I've heard are implicit bias, so implicit bias training for police officers. So looking for ways that officers become more aware of what their role is in the community, when they're most likely to think about using excessive force, and in many of those instances, as I mentioned, when they don't understand who they're interacting with, that might lead to excessive use of force. So we want to engage officers in additional training so they can recognize those moments rather than being in them and again, pulling the gun too soon or having some other tragedy in that interaction and in that instance with the community. So there's a lot of different ways in which you can begin to address this issue. But again, we've only just started the conversation, and I do think that it's important to take a comprehensive approach so that you're, again, building back that community trust that might have been lost.
Okay. So, thank you, Ms. Karina Alejo, for being here. It was a pleasure to have you here on Cowboy TV. Everyone at Salinas High is sure going to enjoy having you here too. So, thank you so much again.
Yes, and I know you wanted to give me the opportunity, but I do want to remind folks that if you're able to vote, please do vote by November 8th. But also, if you haven't yet registered to vote and you'll be 18 by the next election, or if your family has moved since the last election, you do need to re-register to vote, and the deadline for doing that is October 24th.
All right, Cowboys, see you next time.
Thanks for watching our first studio production of Cowboy TV.
We hope you enjoyed and also are more informed about your two running candidates for Assembly.
Before we leave, we have special thanks to give to Ms. Sharon Albert at Mission Trails ROP, everyone here at MCOE, and Mr. Kent Tagmeyer.
Also, Hamish Tyler, Thomas Mooneyham, Jack Peterson, our Salinas High tech and crew, and finally, our Cowboy TV advisor, Mr. James Nichols.
Thanks for tuning in.